Raider Nation, what's going on? Appreciate you joining me for my Real Reaction Tuesday. It's a bit of a follow up from my reaction video Sunday night after our brutal loss, 17-24 from the Los Angeles Chargers. Had a second to kind of digest everything that went on Sunday night, rewatched the film, looked at the stats a little bit, and just wanted to give you my real reaction to the game. But before I get into it, please, if you can, like the video, hit the subscribe button. It would definitely help me, help my motivation to kind of grow the fan base here locally in Vegas as well as just worldwide. In addition to that, make sure you hit the notification button. I will be doing giveaways as I hit milestones with the subscribers. So hit that notification button because I want you to be included. Don't want you to miss out. So with that being said, let's kind of get into it. Um, Again, I looked at the film, looked at stats, and let's cover up the defense first, right? Defense first and foremost, got to minimize the dumb plays. David Long Jr. lining up off sides, obviously Jerry Tillery, the late hit out of bounds on Herbert. You got to minimize that stuff, and that starts with coaching. That's the reality of it. I coached for a long time, coached for 20 plus years, played the game for a lot of years. If you have players that are making mental dumb mistakes like that, that really falls on coaching. That's got to be something that's implemented from day one and that's stressed day in and day out, that you have smart football players. So you minimize those two plays, there's a good chance you take 6 points, 7 points off that board, and then we go into halftime, maybe a 7-17 type of ball game. But with those penalties, it led to points, and we go into halftime down 7-24, which is huge ground to make up in the second half for any type of team. Um, but even though we went into halftime, we let up 24 points. We let up a lot of big rushes in that first half. The second half, the defense took it to them. I mean, pitched a shutout in the second half, held Herbert to less than 170 yards passing the entire game, which Herbert's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. For our defense to be able to do that, that's huge. And then to minimize their total rushing and under 50 yards for the entire second half, and then had huge key stops, stopping the quarterback sneak late in the fourth quarter. I mean, at the end of the day, the one thing I know a lot of people last year, and even for a long time, people have talked about our defense, how our defense needs a ton of improvement, and we know this. But I think one aspect you really got to think about is our offense is one of the top 5 paid offenses in the league. We have spent the top 5 salary cap in the league to our offense. We have nothing but high paid players on the offensive side of the ball, not necessarily on the defensive side. So the reality is how much can you expect from a defense when we're spending a ton of money, a ton of draft picks, a ton of free agency money into the offense? You don't expect the defense to perform like they're getting paid a ton of money. So I think that's one thing we really got to think about is the defense is already kind of getting the shitty end of the stick because they don't have those high paid players on there. So with that being said, I think in the second half they did a great job. They buckled down. They shut down the Chargers offense, or the Chargers offense. It was up to our offense to capitalize on that. And unfortunately, they really didn't. Now, one good thing is that on offense, we got to see our 4th-round rookie out of Purdue, Aiden O'Connell, in my opinion. And I'll get into a little bit deeper detail on my opinion of Aiden O'Connell and his performance. But I think for a rookie in your first game against a division rival, kind of not in your home. Obviously, SoFi is our home away from home, but not on your home turf per se. I think he did a great job. You can't really expect too much, but again, I'll get deeper into that later in the video. But when it comes to the offense, I think the lack of performance, the blame solely is put on Josh McDaniels. I mean, You spent our second round draft pick on Michael Mayer. You spent a third round draft pick on Trey Tucker. You got one of the best receivers in the NFL, if not the best receiver in the NFL. You have Hunter Renfro, Austin Hooper, Josh Jacobs, the reigning rushing champion, and you brought in your guy Garoppolo. Now, obviously, AOC played, but there's no excuses. What and if you were able to view my previous video on um, just kind of the keys to victory, keys to the game in order for us to really have a chance. I said we had to get more players involved. We had to get the other guys involved. Michael Mayer had to get some catches. Trey Tucker had to get, at least 3 to 4 touches. We had to throw the ball deep. We did a little bit this game, but we had to take deep shots. But the thing is Josh McDaniels, he's still not getting others involved. It's just not happening. It's still the Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers show. Granted, Josh Jacobs had a little bit better game, not so much in the rushing, but definitely in the passing game. So the reason why our offense stalls out so much is I think because McDaniels just isn't getting guys involved. The defense kind of knows what we're doing. They stack the box, they bring the heat, and he has no answer for it. So basically all my blame on the lack of production on the offense is solely on Josh McDaniels. He's got to get our other guys involved and take the pressure off of the 2 or 3 main guys that we try to use. And one thing I will add is the Chargers had a ton of injuries on the defensive side. Bosa out, Derwin James out. These guys that are key focus points on their defense. They were missing. They were out, and we still struggled to be able to move the ball consistently, get any type of rhythm, do the things that we wanted to do. They set the tone, and obviously when it comes to our O-line, it looks like our O-line has regressed, and Khalil Mack took it to us. And again, I'll get kind of deeper into that. But, at the end of the day, I think that's kind of a fair assessment of both our offense and our defense. What I'd like to kind of get into next is some of the players that are kind of on the up, and some players that have either regressed or just aren't really playing to what we expected them to play. And so let's start with kind of the players that are on the rise. I think Aiden O'Connell, if you take a look at the situation he was put in, again, just like I said, first start, division rival, against a pretty good defense. And one thing you have to keep in mind is, and this is a huge knock on Josh McDaniels, Aiden O'Connell for the first 3 weeks was pretty much on the injury list. He was our third quarterback. So we had Jimmy Garoppolo, we had Brian Hoyer, and then it was Aiden O'Connell. And the thing is when you're in practice, you're obviously your starter's going to get roughly 75% of the reps, and then the remaining kind of gets split up between your second and third string. Where your second string is going to get a little more than your third. So there's a good chance that Aiden O'Connell maybe saw 10% of the snaps, even when he was not on the injury list. So if Josh McDaniels knew that if Jimmy G went down and he was going to go to Aiden O'Connell, why wasn't he prepping O'Connell in the first place? If you knew that was your move, you had Brian Hoyer as your second string quarterback this entire season, the first 3 games, and then all of a sudden you decide to put Aiden O'Connell in. I think that's just lack of preparation on McDaniel's part. And so I don't blame, everybody wants to talk about, Aiden O'Connell has fumble issues. No, our offensive line didn't do him any favors. And you got to understand the situation. Aiden O'Connell was dealt a really shitty hand. And I think he had some zip on the ball. He made some good throws. I think in the situation he was in, I think he did a good job. So I think Aiden O'Connell, one of the I put him in that category of one of the players on the rise. Trayvon Morg, he got our first turnover of the season on defense with that interception. I think it was kind of midway through the game. That was our first turnover of the season. Um, I have him actually in the last two games. He hasn't allowed a single catch. And then in last week's game, in the second half, and kind of towards the tail end of the first, he tallied um, 9 more run stops. So in the last two games, he hasn't given up a single catch, and he's helping in the run game. Coming up and stopping the runs, and he's got our first turnover of the season. Got to put him in that category of players on the rise. Malcolm Kuntz. Malcolm Kuntz, I think, was doing a good job on the opposite side of Crosby. I think one of the stats that I saw was Max Crosby I think he's either first or tied for first for quarterback rushes and quarterback pressures, but he's tied for, and this was before the Chargers game, but he was tied for 24th in sacks with 2. And I credit that to the fact that Max Crosby does a great job of coming off the edge and getting pressure. But if you don't have pressure on the opposite side of him, that allows the quarterback to escape, that allows the quarterback to have an exit. And now Max is just chasing, as opposed to that quarterback now having to step up. He freezes, and now Max Crosby can get that sack. Because we're not applying pressure from anywhere else, those quarterbacks have lanes to take off. And we've played out of the 3 games, we played um, Russell over at in Denver. He can scramble. He can move. So if there's a lane, he's going to get out. Same with Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett can move. He can get out. So to me, I think with Malcolm Kuntz playing a better game, it helped Max Crosby being able to get to that quarterback and get some pressures. So I think Malcolm Kuntz, with the lack of production from Tyree Wilson so far, I think he's kind of on the up and up. And then the 2 D tackles, John Jacobs and Bilal Nichols, we've been waiting for D tackles to kind of come up and play up to a level that could help our D line really produce. And I think this game they did a good job. John Jenkins had some good run stops, played a huge role along with Bilal Nichols, but played a huge role in the 4th down quarterback sneak. Some of those short yardage runs that we need to kind of shut them down. They came up big. They had, I think, between both of them, they had 3 tackles for losses in the backfield, which is something we haven't seen really all season. So I will take that as a positive. So that's kind of those are the 4 players between Aiden O'Connell, Trayvon Moehrig, Malcolm Kuntz, John Jenkins, and Bilal Nichols. I think those are the 3 guys that really were on the up and up, on the rise during the Chargers game. And then the players that are kind of falling behind, and I don't think it needs to be said, Jerry Tillery. This is a player that's been doing this not just when he came on with us last year with the Raiders. I mean, he did this when he was with the Chargers. This is a common issue with him, and for the Raiders to not put it in check, that's on the Raiders coaching staff, but it's also on him. It's about time. If he continues to make dumb mistakes like this, what's the point in having him on the field? So I think without it, being said, Jerry Tillery definitely is falling behind. Jacorian Bennett. Now, I only put him on here because he was benched. Later in the game, he did get burned deep a couple times. His recovery speed was really good, but I think the only reason why I put him on here, and just so I can point this out, I think the cornerback position is one of the hardest positions to play in football, especially as a rookie in your first season. You have to adjust to the speed. NFL receivers are extremely good, and he's coming from a Maryland school that, he really didn't have much competition all season long. And so, and he has a very aggressive way of playing. He loves the bump and run. He's very physical. He's going to have to learn how to take that physical play and adjust it so that he doesn't try to overcompensate or be too aggressive, and then he gets burned and gets taken over the top with a deep ball, because it has happened. So I love his aggressiveness. He's just going to have to learn how to use that in a way that's going to help him against at the NFL level. So I only put him as a player kind of falling behind is just because he needs to learn how to tailor that aggressiveness and how it can work in the NFL. But I have high hopes for him. I do like what I see out of him. Um, I got to put Jermaine Illuminor on here. The Khalil Mack had 6 sacks, was one away from the NFL single game sack record that's still held by Derek Thomas with 7. 4 out of those 6 sacks was on Jermaine Illuminor, and even outside of that, I mean, he was just getting beat up. So I hope he can improve, because I think Jermaine Illuminor looked really good last season, and part of this season. But Khalil Mack took it to him, and if you give up that many sacks, I'm sorry, you can't. You got to be falling behind. So that's why Illuminor's on here. And then I will put Tyree Wilson on here. Reason being is because for a seventh round, or I'm sorry, for a uh, top 7 pick of the NFL draft, you just expect more. You don't see little flashes. Now, in the very beginning of the game, he had a great tackle for loss where he was on the opposite side of the run, scraped down line of scrimmage, made a really good hit, tackle for a loss. But then he somewhat kind of disappeared. And yeah, you see some of these maybe like flashes, but for a top 7 pick, you got to see more than flashes. So until I start to see more, I got to keep him on a player that's fallen behind, because you got a guy like Malcolm Kuntz that's kind of outplaying him right now. So that's kind of my breakdown on some of the players. Some players on the rise, some players falling behind, and then you know some of the key plays that I think were huge turning points. One, I think what was huge was McDaniels not challenging the potential touchdown catch by Devontae Adams. I think many of us on that watching the game thought that's a touchdown. Devontae Adams caught it, looked like that ball was across that plane. And I know all touchdowns are reviewed, but it wasn't even called a touchdown. So I don't know why McDaniels wouldn't review it or throw that challenge flag. I think that was a missed opportunity, and it obviously could have been a huge turning point. Um, and then obviously, from my angle, from a lot of people that I was talking to during the game, when Herbert reached over for the goal line, in my opinion, I thought he was short. I thought he was well short. I'm not exactly sure what those refs were looking at, but that's a pivotal point in the game. I mean, that puts them up, 24 points, or sorry, we had 7, but it puts them up by 20, and just not exactly sure. But we're Raiders. We're the Raider Nation. We are used to the refs not really making those calls in our favor. So we're used to it. Still pissed off about it, but it is what it is. And then at the end of the game, McDaniels calling a pass play. And I said this in my instant reaction video right after the game. I think that was a horrible call for a lot of reasons. At the end of the game, you need a touchdown and an extra point. You're basically inside the 5-yard line. You have the former rushing champion. But not only do you have the former rushing champion, but you have a rookie quarterback starting his very first game. Just run the ball. Run the ball. I don't care if you run the ball 4 times. Run the ball. Aiden O'Connell's a rookie. If you could have ran the ball and scored and kicked the extra point, even if you go into overtime, and hopefully we pull off overtime, but you give that rookie confidence that he potentially could have had his first game-winning drive be his first game ever in the NFL. But no, you decide to run a play that, in my opinion, makes no sense. Even in the press conference afterwards, you said that the Chargers ran a very common coverage where the corner lets the outside receiver go and sits in the flat, waiting for that inside receiver to go on that out route. Yeah, it's a very typical combo situation. But why even put the rookie in that when you have the reigning rushing champion in the backfield? And I will add, there was still a lot of time left. You needed to kill some of that clock. The last thing you want to do is score, kick the extra point. Now it's tied, and there's either short of 2 minutes or over 2 minutes left for Herbert just to get in field goal range to win the game. You run the ball. You may not get it the first or second try, but you're killing some of that clock. But again, you got Josh Jacobs. Just run the ball. I think that's just, between the call last week against the Steelers and then this call, Josh McDaniels is just not doing himself any favors when it comes to kind of pleasing the nation or convincing us that you know what the hell you're doing. So those are kind of my takes. At the end of it all, we're 1-3, a horrible spot to be in. We got Green Bay coming home prime time Monday night at Allegiant Stadium. It's going to be a tough game, but the reality is I think these next 5 games are going to be huge for Josh McDaniels, not necessarily the Raiders. I think it's just huge for Josh McDaniels himself. The majority of these games are winnable, but if he cannot come out with winning at least 4 out of these 5 games, his future's got to be on the line. Now, I'll put out another video on whether or not I think he should get fired. But let me know in the comments if you think if Jimmy G is healthy, who should start, Jimmy G or Aiden O'Connell? In the presser, McDaniels did say that he would start Jimmy G if he's good to go. But let me know what you think. Let me know what you think in the comments. Start Jimmy G or start Aiden O'Connell. And in addition to that, let me know how you feel about this week's game. Let me know. Let me know if you think we got a chance against Green Bay. They're a tough team. So give me a W if you think we're going to win. Give me an L if you think you're going to lose. This is an honest channel. I'm not going to knock you if you think we're going to lose. Trust me. We don't have a history of winning, so I ain't going to judge you. But I appreciate you guys. One last thing. Couple of events that are going on here locally. If you are here in the local area, you got Charles Woodson that's going to be on the northwest end on Sunday the 8th doing a signing at a Smith's grocery store. So hit that up. It's all online. You can look up the address, but it's a Smith's on the northwest end. Then you got Josh Jacobs Friday, October the 13th. He's going to be at Mandalay Bay. There's a new sports bar that opened up called Flanker Bar. October 13th, you want to get a shot to go meet up with Josh Jacobs, go hit him up there. So that's kind of the end of the video. I appreciate you guys sticking around. Again, please like the video, subscribe if you can. And again, don't forget to hit the notification button because as I hit milestones with subscribers, I'll be doing giveaways and I don't want you guys to miss out on it. So appreciate you all. Until the next video, Raider Nation, I'm out.